Hi guys, welcome back to the consumer series all about heating and renewables. This one is about making the most efficiency or extracting the most efficiency out of your gas boiler that you currently have and test whether you're suitable for a heat pump potentially in the future. The first thing you can do to decrease your heating bills is obviously just turn down the thermostat. You'll see this mentioned everywhere. It's kind of obvious. The lower the temperature in the building, the lower heat loss you're going to have, because obviously turning the thermostat up and down is kind of self-explanatory. If you have a new boiler, and when I say a new boiler, I mean one installed within the last 16 years. So in 2005, condensing boilers became mandatory. Condensing boilers are boilers that can run at a lower temperature and extract a little bit more heat out of the gas fumes that are normally blown outside. When these gas fumes get so cool, they actually condense back into water, hence the name condensing boiler. If you've got a boiler older than 16 years old, none of the following advice will really apply to you. The first thing we need to find out is if your boiler is a combination boiler or a standard sort of regular boiler or system boiler. The way that you find out that is if you have a hot water tank or not. Combination boilers heat the water instantaneously inside that white box you see on the wall. Other regular boilers have a separate tank that they heat. Now, combination boilers are actually a lot more easy to make more efficient, and that's because they can run at two temperatures, their hot water temperature and their heating temperature individually. What we need to try and do with both of these boilers is get your flow temperature to your radiators down as low as possible without you becoming uncomfortable. So what we typically find when a boiler is delivered to site is that it's not optimized for efficiency at all. The flow temperature is turned right up to maximum, so the manufacturer doesn't get any callbacks. However, that's costing you more money. So the way you save money is find your boiler. On the front of the boiler, you should see a little dial. You want to knock that dial down slowly but surely until you start to feel the room temperature drop. Bear in mind though, you should be doing this and fine-tuning this when it's cold outside. If you're doing it as mild outside and knock down the flow temperature, when it does get colder outside, you'll get cold. So wait for a coldish day, you can kind of knock it down between and then fine tune your flow temperature so it's nice and low, and you'll find that actually your comfort will probably increase. You might need to set your on time a little bit earlier because it could take longer to heat up, and then you can just leave it there. The boiler can run at a much lower temperature, extract more of this condensing efficiency. And if you really want to be very anal with it and make even more efficiency gains, you can actually turn the boiler down as it gets warmer outside and turn it up when it gets colder outside, and you'll extract even more efficiency. Or you can get a controller that does this for you, that has what's called weather compensation, and that will do that on an automatic ongoing basis. So that's the first tip, turn your boiler down. If you've got a combination boiler, you can turn it down as much as you want. If you don't have a combination boiler, if you have a regular type of boiler that has a separate hot water tank, you can't really go below 55 degrees. Because you won't be able to heat your hot water tank. The limit there may be even 60 degrees, but that would still be much better than a 70-degree flow temperature. Or you can upgrade that controller on that boiler, not all boilers have this, to a dual temperature controller or hot water priority, which can give one flow temperature to heating, one flow temperature to hot water. That won't be something you do, you need an engineer. If you need an engineer that understands all of this stuff, look on the HeatGeek website on our Find a HeatGeek map, and you'll find an engineer who can transform your regular boiler into a hot water priority one to give low flow temperature for heating and higher flow temperature for hot water, and perhaps upgrade you to the weather compensation that I mentioned earlier on. If you are looking into new thermostats to try and get this flow temperature to automatically adjust for you, make sure you watch our Watch This Before You Buy a Smart Stat video, which will pop up here, and that will give you a guide as to what to watch out for, because you can't just fit any thermostat and make this work, and it doesn't just work on any boiler. But for the best guidance, the real best thing to do is to find a HeatGeek, because they can guide you through all this. There's a lot to learn here, and far more than the average consumer needs to know. Next, we have hot water temperature. If you've got a combination boiler, you've got even more savings that could be made here. With combination boilers, because they instantaneously heat the water, we don't really have to worry about bacterial issues. So actually, you could probably turn your hot water temperature, and there should be a separate dial on the front of the boiler for this, down to as low as 38 degrees. 38 degrees is the average showering temperature. You might want to have it up slightly higher. If you haven't got a dishwasher and you wash up by hand, you might want to turn it slightly higher than that, but 40 degrees is typically fine. If you do turn it that low, this boiler will condense more, it will put less energy in. If you think about it, if you turn your hot water up to say 60 degrees, When you go run that to a shower, you have to cool it back down with cold water again. You're generating heat only to cool it back down. Makes no sense at all, right? So obviously you just turn down your combination boiler to as low as possible till you're happy showering in it. One more caveat there, it can cause some issues with mixer taps. So if you start to notice your taps behaving funny or the temperature swinging up and down, just knock it back up slightly and that should resolve that issue. If you have a regular type of boiler with a separate hot water cylinder, that can't be run the same way. You have to be keeping your hot water temperature at least 50 degrees to prevent Legionella growth or bacterial growth inside the cylinder. Legionella dies within 2 hours at 50 degrees, but if you have it as high as 60 degrees, it dies much, much quicker. So there's a balance with the hot water cylinder. One thing I would say is the thermostats on hot water cylinders are nearly always out of sync with the actual temperature inside the cylinder. So I would try and test the temperature of the water somehow and refine your thermostat so it's kind of making sure that your outlet is at least 55 degrees. If, however, you've got it set to 55 on the thermostat on the hot water cylinder, it's another little dial that you'll see, but what's coming out your tap is like 70 degrees, you've got a constant inefficiency there of just high temperature boiler and heat leaving the cylinder into your airing cupboard for no reason. The cooler we can keep that cylinder, the less heat will be lost into the airing cupboard. And on that note, while you're there looking at the cylinder, if it's not got insulation on it, get insulation on it. If it's got insulation on it already, perhaps put some more insulation on it and all the pipes around it. There's no point in heating up an airing cupboard 24/7 to temperatures it doesn't need to be unless you use it for that specific purpose. Next, now this one's a little bit more advanced, is range rating. Now range rating, you're really stepping into what installers would do here. However, if you're a little bit more technically minded and you've got access to the instructions, on the front of the boiler, most boilers, most modern boilers, you should see some options to range rate the boiler. And what that does is that reduces its output to what's actually required in the property. Most boilers are vastly oversized. So by drawing back their output, the flow temperature will remain lower much longer and you'll elongate your run time so it won't cycle on and off as quickly. It'll run nice and low and slow, or more low and slow. So look for range rating and bring the range rating right back until you no longer feel comfort when it's cold outside. That's slightly more advanced, so again, look for a heat geek if you want someone to do that for you. If you've got weather compensation, again, that does all this for you. You don't need to worry about range rating. Side benefit of running these flow temperatures, especially on cold days, if you can get your flow temperature as low as 50, even 55 degrees, when it's say -2 outside and you're still comfortable, your property is heat pump ready. If someone comes out and offers you a heat pump and says you need to replace radiators, you can tell them, well, you know you don't because you've already run the system at 55 degrees. Whether it's connected to a boiler or a heat pump or hamsters in wheels, it doesn't matter. If your radiators are 55 degrees and your property is warm enough, then it's going to work with a heat pump and work very well too. Having said that, the lower below 55 degrees, even as low as 35 degree flow temperature, the more efficiency you'll get from your heat pump. You might also be wondering, why didn't my installer do this when he first installed it and set it up? Unfortunately, training in the UK in heating is, I was going to say it's not very good, but actually it's non-existent. The only training really is in safety, and safety has nothing really to do with efficiency. We, however, that's our bag. We train in efficiency. We have a Heat Geek course that's very difficult and complicated to get through. And once people do, they go onto our Heat Geek map where you can find them and you can use them for upgrades or improvements on how you're using your system. Now, you might be wondering, why don't I already know this? Why isn't this information freely available? To be honest, I don't know. But the information just isn't out there. However, you now have a source. So subscribe to the channel and keep an eye out for our Consumer Series playlist for more information on saving money in heating and renewables. Okay, also worth noting, this video is actually part of an article over on heatgeek.com of how to improve your boiler efficiency or your heating system efficiency. Any other bits that we kind of learn and information shared, if you've got any information or tips, please comment below and we'll pop these also on that article, pick out the best ones, and there you'll have a very good list of things that you can do to fine tune your system, save money and save the planet. Okay guys, that's it. Catch you in the next one.
If you're a consumer and would like more advice on renewable heating, check out our Consumer Series playlist here on Heat Geek for all you need to know about renewable heating and energy.